Welcome, everyone. We'll leave it for a couple of minutes, 2 minutes until people join. Welcome to this webinar, to, I think, 8th webinar, UTVV, Camino Ultra and Alex Alvarez, Fittest You. I'm excited that you're all here joining us. So today's topic is a very interesting topic, and I struggled with it a lot as a trail runner. So before we get into our talk and Alex's insights and David's insights, let's do a small introduction. First of all, we have three amazing human beings today. David Bone, he's a Camino Ultra coach. He's an amazing human being. He actually got recently, I think a week ago, he got into Badwater 200 race, which is crazy in the States. And I've been working with David for a while now, I think 2 years, coaching, and I've known him for more than that. So he's an amazing human being. He's not just a running coach, but a beautiful, beautiful soul. And Alex Alvarez, he's a personal trainer, a specialist in nutrition and personal training. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Alex for the past exactly a year, 13 months. And his knowledge is just like incredible. Like I've never met someone so knowledgeable in nutrition and personal training. I've seen it in my own results in the past 13 months. I've done an amazing I've seen an amazing transformation because of Alex's guidance. So yeah, Alex is from Fittest U, amazing coach. And we have obviously Bostian Mikus. He is our race director. He's an amazing human being, alpinist. He's always in the mountains. This was Sunday. Yeah, Sunday I saw again some stories. He was somewhere in the mountains. I was so cold. I just logged out of the Instagram because it was too much to watch. But he does this crazy, extreme for me challenges, and that's that's where the whole challenge yourself comes from, Bostian. So on that note, so we get to know a bit more who you guys are, from where you are. Can you please write from what country you are in the comments section, in the chat, not the comments. And then when we have questions, when we're going to be speaking, you can raise your hand, and then you can unmute yourself and show your face, so it's so we can see who you are and ask any questions that you want in regards to nutrition or running, but it's nutrition mostly. You can ask Alex or David. Slovenia. Yeah. So on that note, we will be freestyling, and I will let's see where are we mostly from. Austria. I think the typical audience, people that join us, are from Amsterdam, Netherlands, Croatia, all the countries close to Slovenia, Hungary. Beautiful. So many amazing human beings showing up at night to learn about nutrition and get some insights on how to fuel ourselves. Beautiful. Slovenia, Vid, Israel, Croatia, Netherlands. Amazing, guys. Amazing. So I'll start with the first question. The first question I have for, both Alex and David is, I had a race a couple of months ago, and I read on the internet, obviously I Googled, what I should do, carb loading, and runners are crazy about carb loading. And what I noticed, that all the knowledge that I got from the internet, speaking to Alex, he was like, no, you shouldn't be eating so many calories. I won't say the number, because that's crazy. That's too much. And I was like, no, Alex is not a trail runner. That's my thought. Like, how can he know? But then actually I followed his advice, and the race went smoothly. It was amazing. So the first question is, how many calories, how should we eat on a daily basis? We'll move into racing strategies later, but on a daily basis, as trail runners that most, let's say, run 5 times per week, 4 times per week, how should we fuel? How many carbs should we have? How many protein should we have? Should we be eating a lot because we are running? Because the most common thing is people say, well, I'm running, I need to eat a lot, which I used to do that. And just so we have some context, I'll use myself. I try to lose weight for I think 2 years. I've done Ironmans, I've done ultras, and I think yeah, 2 years I tried to lose weight. I was around 85, went to 82, 83, and always gained back the weight. And I was like, but I'm carb loading. Everybody says you should carb load, you should carb load. So I was carb loading, but I wasn't losing weight. And it wasn't until obviously I started working with Alex that I lost 15 kilos because I learned from Alex like, okay, so that was the wrong strategy. So what should we do? Because I didn't know that how many calories I should be eating per day. So
Yeah.
Alex, I'll start with you because obviously it's more.
Yes. Sounds good. Sounds good. So, hi everyone. Apologies if you can't hear me too well. I've got a little bit of a blocked nose, but nothing too serious. I'm sure I'll shake it off in 24 hours and with my powerful immune system. Anyway, so that's a very, very good question. And there's obviously there's no one size fits all. Everyone is different. But as a general framework, I would say that it's good to think about your nutrition for running, whether it's trail running, whether it's endurance running, in two kind of main ways. One is like, generally speaking, how you're running when you're running throughout the year and what your main objective is. And in my experience working with people, where you're going to get the best impact of prioritizing your attention from nutrition is actually getting to a better body composition. So for women, for men, it's going to be um, around 15%. Like it's going to depend. There's going to be some other factors, but generally speaking, as a man, you want to get to around 15%. Women, it's going to be slightly higher. But sometimes what happens is people think about, they hear these random facts and they're all true. They're talking about, well, I need to be fueled for this run. And they're thinking about performance. But the greatest performance we're going to get is actually being lean enough to perform over particular distances. So I'm not saying go no carb, but I think I'm definitely not a no carb fan. But I think generally speaking, we should actually think about creating a calorie deficit. That should be our real priority. There's so many benefits, whether it be related to injuries. We did touch on some of them the last call that we did, and whether it be like reducing impact on injuries, whether it be improving running economy. So as a general concept, I think one of the greatest things that any runner can think about is actually, I need to optimize my body composition. That's number one. And then you think about how to do that. And everyone is different. The simple answer is you're going to need like a balanced ratio of all your macronutrients, which is going to be your protein, carbs, and fats. You shouldn't go too crazy in any specific extreme of one being massively higher. And then as you approach race, then your whole concept of how you fuel yourself can change slightly. But one thing I will say is, just as a general rule, is most people massively underestimate, firstly, with runs, especially like trail runs, generally speaking, they're not done at really high intensity and they're not done fast, generally speaking. And carbs fuel higher intensity activities. So we're kind of overestimating the importance of carbs most of the time. It's actually going to be fats that are fueling us, if that makes sense. So I don't want to go into like a crazy unnecessary detailed synopsis. I want to make sure that I'm being followed so far, and I'm sure we'll have a little bit of a back and forth. But generally speaking, it is body composition, I think, is very important to focus on, and understanding how little carbs can be useful to fuel activity. It could be 30 grams can fuel you at a decent pace for an hour, for example, for most people. And then the rules slightly change when you get leaner and you have more lean body mass and you have greater muscle. Then you're somebody who's expending carbs and burning carbs way quicker than a normal person. And if your intensity is high. But generally speaking, most people do not fit into that category. And that's the thing. So they're looking at information and research that has been done in elite athletes where they're 10% body fat and they're moving at really high intensities. So they might need to load up 400, 500 grams of carbs a week leading up to it. But for somebody who doesn't even really work at a certain intensity or doesn't break down carbs that well, different rules might apply. So I hope that's a good enough initial response on that. And one last thing to
Yeah.
add, and sometimes what can then happen is people who have misinterpreted this scientific understandings is they load up too much and they're basically heavier than they should be, and they're a bit screwed essentially. So that's the last kind of source on there.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex.
Pleasure.
David, what's your take on loading up and what obviously following up what Alex said previously, loading up for long runs during the weekend because usually weekend means long runs.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, as you know, Alex, I'm a huge fan of the subject of nutrition and the importance of nutrition. Every single person on this call, on this webinar, everyone's very different. So, exactly what Alex just shared. I think, it's very important when we talk about this subject to recognize that, we're all on our own journey of self-discovery. And one of the things that we love about endurance running and being part of, everything that's on offer in the UTVV kind of ecosystem is that nutrition is incredibly important, and something that we do genuinely all need to spend the time to understand where our individuality is important. So as we've already mentioned, whether your current body composition, your age, your metabolism. What I would say, Alex, is as you already mentioned, if we think about our training at the moment, and especially for the training for the next few weeks, as we lead up to UTVV, the long run is, in my opinion, extremely important. And one of the things that would be really great to talk about on this webinar is that, in my experience, most people are under fuel for that long run, which is quite concerning as a coach, because then people go into the actual event itself, typically doing the longest thing they've ever done, having already been lacking in kind of preparation. So I think it's really important to understand that it's important to practice the nutrition as equally as practicing the running. And I'd be strongly recommending that people look at the types of fueling that they currently use, and you've got time in the next few weeks to perhaps try some different food sources. I mean, maybe Boshan, as part of the call, can help us understand the types of food that will be on the aid stations. But again, sometimes we get into certain habits, and I think there's a great opportunity here to take a look at other options that might be good for us in the fueling strategy. So yeah, think about yourselves as individuals. Recognize that you've got some really good time now over the next few weeks to think about nutrition, and seriously practice it with as much discipline as you probably are for your running itself.
David, do you mean mostly nutrition for before race day or on race day, or are you talking about nutrition Monday to Friday, let's say, like day to day food, or is the race day nutrition?
So I mean, there's two good subjects there, isn't there, buddy? One is the importance of the fueling, the nutrition. As we say, around the long run, I genuinely do mean the night before, the morning, during, and after. They're all equally important periods that you should think about. I mean, typically everybody on this call may well be doing anywhere from 2 to 4 hours of running in that long run, and so to get into a habit where you're not thinking about the type of food you're eating the night before, and then maybe being, you know, a lot more thoughtful about it on the race day, you know, it doesn't work that well. So yeah, to your other point, Alex, you know, if you are then thinking about, you know, if you are over the next few weeks doing more training, you know, maybe more sessions and more time on feet than you've done before, then, you know, again, it's as equally as important, isn't it, to look at the types of food that you're eating. I mean, as Alex already mentioned, I personally, I really favor the kind of holistic approach to this. So, you know, I would not be recommending that anybody does anything too dramatic. You know, everybody's understands their body to a certain degree, but you can, you know, I'm not a big fan of eating more. I think you should look at what you're currently eating. You should make some small changes to eat a little bit more healthier, and then just observe. So there's plenty of things that all of us know we shouldn't eat so much of, like lots of sugar, you know, sugary drinks. You know, it's a fallacy to think just because we're running more that we should eat more of that type of food. You know, we should really be thinking about holistically how nutrition impacts not only the activities that we do, but also the recovery that we need, and good sleep as well.
Yeah.
But do you think? Yeah, go on.
Can I add? I completely agree with everything David's saying. I think there's many variables here, and it's about understanding really the time horizon. My kind of take home message would be, and everyone has a preference. My take home message would be, the further you are from event, I personally would observe most people and say that they're not optimal in terms of body composition. So my personal view is I would actually like my athletes to be slightly underfed for all training, far away from competition. But because I want them to get leaner, I don't want them to be like, I'm feeling amazing. I want them to work on somehow slightly limited resources. I'm not looking for PBs. I'm just looking for consistency in somewhat of a deficit state. But during that time, I think it's very important for everyone to start gathering data about themselves and observing how much carbs am I actually consuming, not just saying, oh, I heard this is good, I'm just going to have bucket loads of pasta because I know it's a carb. It's about having some data of what you're actually consuming. And just like David said, you start to establish a baseline of what is your norm. And certainly as you get closer, there's many variables that change with training, but that's when you start to be, and when I say closer, I mean like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I'm not saying like a few days before, but the longer time you've got to prepare, in some ways, the better. But as you get closer, that's when you can start looking at, okay, we're seeing some signs that our runs are quicker, or we're accumulating better distances. And now my fueling protocol is becoming important. But I've also now got some data because I've been doing it for months and I'm aware what my baseline is. And then from there, you can adjust. And obviously, when it gets to actual event stuff, that's where I'd say that would really be David's speciality over my own. So just wanted to add a little context to time horizons, basically.
So basically, UTV is in 2 months, Alex. What you're saying that now athletes should.
Now's not the time to say I should now start eating in a deficit and be in some last minute panic. I think I would say it'd be good to start observing what are your current habits, start tracking some macros, observing your baselines, and see, kind of journaling, how are you performing time wise? How do you feel exertion wise after runs with current baselines of fuel? It's not the time to be like, right, I have to now lose. But it's good to have this knowledge to understand what are the things that are going to have the most impact on my performance longer term. And one of the underappreciated ones is the body composition. People are sometimes thinking too, oh, this carb, this electrolytes, which are all massively important. But if you're like thinking longer term about your development as an athlete, you want to think about both, basically. That's my.
And how can we know what is our baseline? How do we do that?
It's difficult because you can't really prescribe. You have to establish what is somebody's maintenance calories. Just generally, this is just calories, and you have to see how fast they're running. So I guess I don't want to give like a wishy-washy no answer, but I also don't want to say like this much grams of carbs per kilo of body weight, because it really depends. But um I would say that it would be good for people to download like an app like MyFitnessPal, something like that, to start tracking what they're currently doing, because at least that way they're not even necessarily changing. They're just gathering data on their current things. And if you find that your macros are way out of whack, where they're not somewhat balanced, like you've got 10% protein, which is obviously going to be affecting your recovery and stuff like that, and then you've got crazy high carbs, you might be able to say, okay, I can slightly balance those ratios. But you'll most likely already know that most people would be roughly maintaining their weight now with what they're currently doing. I doubt people would be losing or gaining. They'll be roughly maintaining with their current thing. All they're doing maybe is just getting some data on their current habits. And if the ratios are completely out of whack, that can be like a first sign to say, hey, we can focus on this initially, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So David, you mentioned you mentioned previously that a lot of your athletes, they underfuel. How do they underfuel before the race, like 5 days or 2 months before or 3 months ago? And how can we know now, like, am I underfueling or not? And how do they underfuel?
Yeah. So there's a couple of important things here, aren't there? I mean, I think everybody on the call, to Alex's really good point, I mean, part of this is to really, take a little bit of accountability to what everybody's doing. Sometimes we do kind of trick ourselves, don't we, into what we believe sort of like good behavior. It's kind of, as Alex said, like pasta's good, yeah. I mean, there's so many different types of pasta and pasta sauces. There's like having one bowl or three bowls or lots of cheese. It's just a long list, isn't it? So I think, Alex, the important thing here is to say, okay, in the course of the week, there's going to be times when I'm going to be doing relatively quite short runs or easy runs or rest days. That's typically a time when you should think about, just eating normally, eating healthily, and just thinking about small little modifications to your habits, knowing that you've got, a really big event coming up in 2 months, and small changes incrementally all build up to something really good. As often it's very much a mindset thing, in terms of, as Alex said, just feeling a little bit better, a little bit leaner. That's in general in the week. As you're getting towards your long run, what I like to see my athletes think about is, again, lots of people use buzzwords like, I did a run fasted and I feel great. And I think, but you're about to do a run that might be 6 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours. It's impossible for you to do that run fasted. So don't do that now in your long runs. It's about being sensible, eating well. So again, I would like to think that people consider, what are they going to eat the night before the race? Practice that. You've got 6 great weeks of training, of long runs. Get into some nice practice about what you eat the night before. But you do not have to eat a lot. Just eat something good and healthy, a nice small portion. Wake up in the morning, if you're doing a morning run, have something to eat. The real simple stuff that most people know about, a banana, a bagel, something simple, but, with a bit of decent substance, of carb nature. And then take some of your familiar nutrition out with you on the long run. But like I said, I do think that, maybe we can start asking some questions, Alex, as to like what people on the call like to eat nutritionally at the moment. You know, do we have people that like gels or can't stand gels? Again, you've got a bit of time here to practice some things, because you know you've in the race itself, often food and nutrition becomes a really big problem for many people. Like they do struggle to take on more fuel, and if you're not taking on fuel, then it's typically the number one reason why most people either DNF or have an unsuccessful long distance event. Is it could be the weather conditions in combination with nutrition. So again, you've got time to think about these things and start to practice it. So yeah, think about it more holistically, Alex, and not just something you're trying to consider in that one run in the week.
Awesome. So let's we'll do a poll and see how many people from this call know how many calories do they eat per day. So now a poll will show up at your screen, and choose the appropriate answer. 1 second. Save.
Yeah, and definitely don't train fasted. I have to just second that. I'm not a good idea.
Good.
Don't run on fasted. Okay. So yeah, out of curiosity, let's see how many people know exactly how many calories you eat per day. Yes, I track everything I eat. No, I don't. I think I do. I think I do means
No.
it's yeah.
Means I don't want to say no, but
How can people track their calories, Alex, David?
I mean, I think Alex is probably more knowledgeable than me, but I want to make it clear, especially as most of the people on this call who are doing UTVV and either have done ultra marathons or want to do ultra marathons, I'm personally not a big fan of this. I don't get my athletes to necessarily count things. I look at them first of all, to share with me what they eat. So I have this rule when I'm coaching. If I ask Alex like to do a 40-minute run, but I don't know that after the run he goes and buys 3 McDonald's meals, then we're never going to get very far in the running. If he's got 23 hours of bad habits and 1 hour of good habits. So, you know, what do you eat? When do you eat? What don't you like? Why don't you like it? So again, I think, you know, it's important to think about, you know, all the health benefits, the whole holistic health benefits you get out of exercise and eating and resting, cross training and sleeping can all benefit from a good approach to nutrition. So yeah, like I say, I think most people on this call have got an understanding that, you know, at times we overeat, we don't need to eat as much, that, you know, food made by ourselves is typically far better than buying stuff from a supermarket. Again, you just look into these things, you know, fruit, water, salads, good simple things that have been good for us for millennia, whereas other stuff far less so. So yeah, you know, Alex, I think it's important to understand our energy levels. You know, if you're feeling like a lack of energy, you know, anybody in this call that might be more worried about the relationship between food and much more increased exercise, it's a very important subject. And obviously both myself and Alex would agree that there are specialists in this area. You know, if you do genuinely get, you know, feel lightheaded or sick, or you have lots of kind of, you know, unpleasant reactions to certain things, then, you know, having food tests, food intolerances, that, you know, it's a big thing when you're consuming lots and you're taking a lots in, and it has a lot of issues with your gut, which has a big impact on long distance endurance type of activities.
Alex?
remind me what the initial prompt was,
The
or
prompt
just
is,
or just my response kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, based on the answers that we got,
Mm,
58% of people don't count how
mm,
many calories they eat. 28, I think I do, and 15% yes, which is
yeah.
normal. But David is saying basically,
Not
what
everyone
David
needs
is
to
saying,
count.
yeah, I mean, you can go based on your feeling, but for me
Mm,
personally, I think it's better to know because I didn't know, and I thought like the foods that I discovered with you, it's like, oh shit, this is like
mm,
800 calories for one bagel. It's like, well, no, I prefer to to eat something else. But leading up to
yeah.
the race, we have 2 months now, and let's say if anyone has any questions, by the way, you can raise your hands or write it in the chat box. But I'm curious to see 2 months ago, and let's say someone is doing gladiators, 100 kilometers race. From now on, what should we do? What should
Mm,
they think about? How many calories they should eat, and then
mm,
we'll move forward to the second part. Will be the strategy on race day, on race week, for example.
mm. So I'll just respond to like the whole kind of debate, should you track, should you not? I do think everyone's different. There's, you kind of have to know your personality. But my recommendation is, because there are some people who are fortunate enough, they kind of have a little bit of fluke and they figure things out. But in my experience, not everyone is that intuitive always, and there is a lot of conflicting information, and people try, they're like, okay, I've heard this is good, and there is truth to what has been said at that moment, but sometimes context isn't provided, so then they get confused and they jump to these things. So in my personal experience, my recommendation would be everyone should track for a period of time. Now, it could be that you might say, hey, all I'm going to do is really diligently track for a few days or for 1 week so I can gather an understanding. And for some people, that might be really insightful. For some people, because the tracking is not just about the knowing. Firstly, even me, I made so many discoveries about what I thought. There's crazy overestimations and underestimations of what we think we're consuming. And most people I encounter will say, "Oh, I eat healthily. I don't know why I can't do this. I don't." It's normally, I don't know why I can't XYZ, but I eat healthily. And it's only upon a further analysis through a tool like tracking your food that you can see what's really going on under the hood. And sometimes unintentionally, we're busy or we're distracted or something happens, we can sometimes underreport to others. So we might forget to say that they ate 5 Big Macs or something because I was of hypothetically. So, and certainly if we're not working with a coach and we're just there by ourselves. So one thing it can give you, if you're up for it, because it's not the easiest thing shining a spotlight on your potential weaknesses like that, but it gives you an upgraded accountability. So my recommendation would be everyone should do it for a period of time. And it's not a bad idea to do it now. Um, so so that's the first thing. And I've gone on a bit of a tangent. So Alex, remind me what the other prompt, because I get very passionate about this subject, as you can see. So you have to forgive me, guys.
The prompt is we have 2 months and someone is
Mm,
running 100
mm.
kilometers.
What
And
should
by
they
the
do
way,
now?
but before we jump into the distance, just out of curiosity, can you guys type in the chat what is the distance that you're running at UTVV? So we can well, Alex and David can give more specific advice because I'm saying 100 because it's 100, I know. So let's see what people are running at the UTVV. And the question will follow basically, what
Mm.
should we do now? 60 kilometers, William, 60, 160, 110, Centurion. Um, and basically the question now, David and Alex, is what's the strategy? 2 months ago, UTV 60 kilometers. I see a lot of 60 and a lot of 110, not a lot of 100 milers. So basically, it's 60 and 110 kilometers. And who is still thinking of the distance to register? Just type thinking. 110. So the majority, from what I see, Themistocles 110. Themistocles, I assume from Greece. Um,
Alex,
yeah. Or
could you ask everybody? I mean, are there any kind of specific worries or concerns that anybody in the call has about foods? Like, like, does people feel like concerns about they potentially might be eating the wrong stuff, or would like to, or ask questions about things, as Alex said, that there's a lot of information, isn't there? And it's the confusion of, you hear of successful meat eating athletes and vegan athletes and keto athletes and people taking supplements and people doing fasted. It's a very confusing space when you hear so many things. And obviously, as you've just heard, most of the people on the call are about to do an event which is, takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and you cannot do that by rocking up and having a sort of disregard for all the benefits of a nutrition approach, a sensible approach. So I think your question's a great question, and if people have got any points they want to raise, then obviously it helps us to focus in a bit more as to what people might be worried about, or where we can answer more specifically.
Yeah, that's a great question, David. Well, you asked yourself. Philip, Philip is asking, for those people who had an established and balanced nutrition habits, what do you think about superfoods and to boost nutrition effects even further? I'm particularly interested in opinions in spirulina.
I'll give my broad spirulina is very good. It has like antioxidant benefits. It's like the highest protein per weight exists in the world, and it's a sea algae and stuff. But these are very, very small details, and I don't think that you'll get an extra squeeze from that. I think I would this is a person who's balanced, so that's fair enough. I mean, I would make sure I would make sure I'm definitely having enough protein for the recovery side of things. I would think about electrolytes. Just generally speaking, I would observe, am I getting muscle cramps in races, after races? And that's a fact. I'd say that's a more significant kind of thing if I'm going to go slightly into the superfood realm. But I don't think you're going to extract so much more performance or recovery from like a specific superfood as spirulina. Like really the foundations are important, I would say. And obviously you want to look at, I know we're discussing nutrition, but definitely like sleep is a big one. So you want to have some kind of attention to that and protocol to that. But spirulina specifically, there's not like a big I don't think you'll notice any significant performance from that or any other superfood.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. What about you, David?
So I always say, again, I think I've already sort of mentioned it, of all I've read a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, I've spoken to a lot of athletes, people that I've coached. I think what I would say, it's really important to have a really strong base platform with nutrition. So typically, you should be eating a lot of good vegetables, and often when you read, you can extract, a very simple one is that often people eat a lot of potatoes, and they either don't eat much or any sweet potatoes. Again, the health benefits of a sweet potato rather than an order, both good things, but a simple switch using sweet potato. Typically, Mediterranean diet is a really strong, straightforward. So if you think about, any of us that have been away on holiday, had a nice summer holiday, and you eat well, and you've got lots of greens, you've got lots of good tomatoes, beetroots, good oils, and things like nuts, lots of good nuts, Greek yogurt, honey. So where the person on the webinar was talking about spirulina, as Alex said, there are all these other things that exist, often in kind of powder or supplement form. you know, again, they're okay, they're good, but they're not the platform. Platform you should come back to is like, is this like something that you can put together simply, or is this processed version? Is it heavily sweetened? So that start with that first of all. Just kind of consider what you're eating more generally. But yeah, I think when you start to get into the realm of like supplements or deficiencies, that's typically when you should maybe look at doing a food test, tolerance test, and understanding what, all of our markers, we're very different from each other. But I mean, there's no harm in spirulina.
Yeah, definitely no harm. And just to add, like David said, when you have a really solid base, you cover a lot through that. And even things like when we're discussing electrolytes and people would look at, oh, let me take this electrolyte powder, and that's okay, but there's also electrolytes in food, in yogurts, in cheeses, in fruits, and in watermelon. These, so there are kind of clues in things already for us. We don't necessarily have to, our first sign to be like, let me jump to a supplement to cover it. You do get covered really well if you have a broad basis of good quality foods, kind of thing. So just a little something to add.
Awesome. Another question from Romana. Thyroid problems here, Hashimoto, and a lot of water retention in the legs. Are there some foods or supplements that are kind of those issues?
I mean, that's a great question. I think that's a really important question where I would basically look to get some much more specialist advice for people, with those type of skills. I do know someone that could help, so we could get the details from this person. I'd be very happy to speak to someone that I know has got a lot of skills in this. But I think, first of all, it's really, really brilliant this person has referenced this. I think, all of us need to have an understanding, like where you body scan yourself and try and observe, as you do more exercise and you do more training, what are you noticing about yourself? Skin's a really good one to observe and things. But yeah, if you've kind of got a general feeling of wellness, that's good. But if you start to see certain signs, then it's often very specific to you as an individual. So you do need to seek some specialist advice on that particular one.
Yeah, I just add, I completely agree with everything David said. In scenarios like this, you do need to definitely seek specific professionals. But I would say it's still important, irrespective of unique scenarios, to cover the basics first. That can carry you really well for most people. And so definitely still do that whilst also getting very specific sort of specialist help as well, is what I'd say.
Awesome. So we have one more questions. Specialists say no running.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
They're the wrong specialist. You have to find a specialist that also performs. I've seen this in many areas in life, but I used to have different physios I'd work with that I would collaborate with and would need to send my clients to. And it was a prerequisite that they had to train, because sometimes what you get is people in lab coats, as Alex knows, I like to talk about these people in lab coats who give this very clinical vacuumed advice. And it's always helpful to have somebody who actually performs as well, because I don't know, maybe some of us actually want to go and be physically active, and we don't just want to stay in our home and that's safe or whatever. I don't know. So yeah, find an active specialist, and I think you'll have more luck with a bit of a nuanced kind of response. So yeah.
Awesome. So we have one more question. Any recommendations for nighttime fueling after 2 a.m. till sunrise, as it's hard to train in that time window, caffeine, etc.?
That is a brilliant question.
By Martin.
Martin, that we should also consider about the wider implications of the subject matter of this question, because again, I think, Alex, most of the people that responded to your earlier question about what distance they're doing at UTVV shared quite a big distance, didn't they? The 60.
1600, the
Yeah.
main.
So again, what I observe a lot with runners and athletes is that most people are creatures of habit. So they do their run, and they do their run first thing in the morning, and therefore their nutrition is typically bound around those same habits. And then all of a sudden you go and do a race, and that race director starts the race off at midday or 11 p.m. at night. Suddenly you're like, I've never trained for this, and how do I eat 2 hours before 11 p.m. or how do I eat 2 a.m. in the morning, or what do I do at 6 a.m.? So the answer to that question is you practice now. You know, again, if Bosjan in a second can tell us a little bit more about the fueling on offer, really do your research into what that specific race, what time does your race start? Where's the elevation? Where are the aid stations? Start to practice some of that in. So I would say to everybody, often in ultra distance events, you don't run every minute of the race. Typically, because of the elevation, you'll be walking, hiking, stopping aid stations. Factor that into your long run. Suddenly get your nutrition out of your bag and walk for 30 minutes. Don't always stop and have your nutrition, or so just practice these things. So I think we're inbuilt, Alex, to think some of these things are a problem, but they're typically just something we haven't tested a lot of. And because of the nature of the sport that we do and we love, we need to apply the same aptitude and diligence of the testing of the fuel as we do to the running. And often we don't, so it feels awkward and weird, doesn't it, to like eat at odd times, but that's what's going to happen in the race, or we'll suddenly find that we've run out of our fuel and we have to rely upon the fuel that we can get hold of. So you've got to practice it, haven't you? So yeah, I think it's.
I think David
Was in
disappeared.
deep thought there. Really thinking deeply on that one.
So
See if he's back.
and until he comes back, I think there is the one of the most important questions we have is just 10 minutes. When we are coming to a race day, so we have 2 months, let's say it's a race day week.
David's
And
back, by the way. Yeah.
I can't see him. Yeah, David, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
You can continue.
Oh no, carry on with the question, buddy.
Okay, so the question is, it's 2 months past UTV's here, it's race week, right?
Yeah.
And how should we fuel during the actual race? So obviously people here are running 100 kilometers. How many carbs per hour should a person have, having gels and then having aid stations as well? And obviously, it's like, well, they say, let's say, I don't know, X number of carbs per hour. How do you manage to count, okay, I need this amount of carbs per hour, but there are aid stations that are going to have food, so you don't overload or underfuel yourself. So you have obviously elite athletes, they have a proper strategy. This is how much, okay, athletes are not elite podium winners. How do we know, okay, I need to have, I don't know, 5 gels, because for me, for example, I carry in my bag so much food and I never finish it. It's like I might as well leave it and have less weight on me, obviously, and run faster. So how do you manage not taking a lot of food versus, so yeah, that's the question.
I think, a lot of what we've been discussing in the call this evening is a reflection on our own personal set of kind of norms and behaviors. And again, if as we've mentioned, like I say, you've got weeks to consider this after the call, the next 6 weeks before the scenario you're discussing, is that, if you haven't tested this, then it's going to be very difficult for you to get this right in the race. So I often say to the people that I coach, the long run session for most of the weeks leading up to is you repeating exactly what you will do for the first 2, 3, 4 hours of the race. Exactly. So, if it's a gel strategy you're talking about, Alex, have you been taking one gel an hour? I mean, ideally that would be the minimum, but have you been taking a gel every 30 minutes or 40 minutes? Have you been taking a gel but you prefer to have real foods? What's the balance between the two? And very diligently sort of practicing that. So what you tend to find when you've been doing this over a period of time is that you get a better understanding of what I would say is the minimum, because for most athletes probably on this call, you'll probably eat less than more because you'll be focused on other stuff, the navigation and things like this. So often what you have to remind yourself is, okay, I'm starting the race. I know that the first aid station is X amount of time or distance away. I usually have a bare minimum of at least a gel per hour. It's 4 hours. So as a bare minimum, I've got some water, typically some electrolytes and those gels, and some other food in my bag. And typically in the beginning of the race, when your brain's in a good place and you're active, you probably remind yourself, oh, it's hour 2 or it's hour and a half, and I now take my next one. You must sort of remember as the race goes on and you get much more tired, your ability to kind of remind yourself that so often, some of my athletes will write this strategy down on their hand, or if you're doing an extremely long race, you might want to print it off on a card and just sort of write down. Or when you go into aid stations later in the race, Alex, often it's good to have a bit of a mantra. Okay, right, I'm coming into that aid station. Let me eat the food that I've currently got, get into the aid station, make sure that I take on something at the aid station, and I'm properly prepared for the next section. Again, you need to have that thought about it. You need to have that discipline. But yeah, it's important to have that recognition of like what you personally perceive to be the sort of the must do, because without it, you're at a certain point, your energy levels are going to drop, and if they drop significantly, then the amount of time and effort is required for you to get back is often, for most people, it's quite a tough period. So keeping on top of your nutrition, accepting, like I said, the conditions around you, when you have some walking spaces. Again, it's very hard to do in the first race you've ever done. That it becomes something easier for you and more, familiar in your second race or your fifth race. And then that's when you forget to do all the simple stuff that's always worked for you. So, if anyone on the call, this is the first time they're doing about it, it's not easy. Something you just have to sort of try and stack up all the good things, all the things that do work in your training, and get them sort of mentally prepared for race day.
Awesome. So, because we're going to wrap up really soon, in a couple of minutes, last question. Thank you for raising the question. How to not take all the food for the duration of your run? What kind of food would you expect to be at the aid stations, specifically gluten-free vegetarian foods, please? And I assume Bostian will come on and share with us the foods that will be.
Yeah, great question. So the UTVV aid stations, there will be vegetables, fruits, salamis, cheeses, but especially for 100K, there will be one hot meal, and it will be gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan, and for those who eat meat. And on the 100 miler, there will be 2 hot meals. So I think there will be a variety of food for everybody. Also chocolates, vegan chocolates. So for those who are just vegan, there will be definitely take care.
I might join just for the chocolate. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, so the aid stations are pretty packed with food. And Philip said that Garmin watch, I think every watch now, Coros, Garmin, they all have I have an alert every 60 minutes. It just helps every 60 minutes um, to have a notification. And from personal experience, I usually really focus in the first like 6 hours, 7 hours just to eat every single hour, because as time passes, it gets harder and harder to consume any food, and especially gels. So yeah, if you have any questions, two things. One, I would highly recommend um, Alex Alvarez. Get in touch with him. Go to his Instagram, go to his website. He's an amazing coach. You can ask him any questions you want. You might want to work with him for the next 3 months, 6 months until the race. The second person, David. David is doing an event here in London, London 100. And if you're from Europe, if you want to explore London, it's an amazing event to come. It's the first year that David and Camino Ultra team is organizing it. I highly recommend you check out London 100. Just go on Google and find it, or find David Bone. Check out the race. It's here in London. It's flat. It's not trails. I know most of you are trail runners. Or if you want to get coaching, Camino Ultra, David, he's an amazing coach. I vouch for him, and obviously I vouch for Alex. So I highly recommend to get in touch with them, to follow them on Instagram, on social, because they're two amazing human beings with so much talent. I'm incredibly lucky and grateful to be working with them. All the rest, well, you've registered for UTV. It's 2 months, 2 months left. You can obviously email UTV and ask any questions that you have. Let's see if we have any more questions. We'll publish all the food at the aid stations of the race guide 2 weeks before the race, which is amazing. For those who are running for the first time, I will share with you a picture. I hope it will add value. What I did on my first when I started. So this was me bonking, as they say. Oops, 1 second. And the reason why. I think you can see me, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you can. Yeah. So this
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, because
This happened because I wasn't fueling. I had no idea about fueling. I was like, it's all right. So if you're running first time UTV in 2 months, please, please, please check your nutrition. Have a gel, have a bar, have a banana. I don't know, have whatever every hour, because I was pretty lucky that I didn't collapse on that hill. And it wasn't like UTV hills. It was like here in England at Peak District. But I nearly collapsed, which was pretty dangerous, but I managed to finish. But yeah, highly recommend check out nutrition, take it seriously, because I didn't take it seriously for the first year of my trail running and ultra running adventures. And that's it. I would like to thank you all for attending, because you're all warriors, being here at 7 p.m. at night, listening and learning from Alex, David, Bostian. I'm truly inspired by all of you that are running 60 kilometers, 100 kilometers. I saw someone is running 100 miler. That's amazing accomplishment, and you're all shining a light to other people. It's incredible to see all warriors doing so much work. And we all know that race day is just it's a test. It's just a test. It's a celebration, which will be in 2 months in Slovenia, which for those of you who haven't been there, it's a beautiful, stunning location. Every time I go there, I'm ecstatic. It's like I'm on drugs when I live there because of the nature. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much, and I'll leave it to Bostian and Alex and David to close.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yeah, like you, I wish everybody all the very best in these next few weeks. And as you said, it's all part of the same beautiful journey, isn't it? So, yeah, just enjoy those last few weeks of training, and get yourself ready for Slovenia. Yeah, good luck.
That's it. Good luck, everyone. Just, there's still plenty of time, but you just use it as a learning experience, opportunities to learn more about yourself and where your limits are and where you can stretch yourself. And most importantly, have fun.
So thank you, Alex, for this knowledgeable presentation. Also, David. and Alex for moderation. And yeah, thank you for all participants who listened this amazing presentation, this amazing call. And yeah, I think that we hear each other in 1 month, and we can go through the technical aspect of the race, and we can also talk about nutrition and the at stations more detailed.
Yeah, we will see. We have one more webinar left, which will be more technical. It will be me and Bostian. So you can obviously follow us if you're not following on Instagram or on the emails. And we will see you soon. And that's it from us. Good night.